Okay, friends, thank you so very much for clicking play. It's absolutely wonderful to have you back, and I want to wish each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas. Jesus Christ puts the name in the day, and that's a big deal for those of us who are believers. And it's my great pleasure to have back on the show here on Christmas our friend Bob Kudla, the founder of Trade Genius. How are you, Bob?
Hey, Merry Christmas. You and I could say that without getting arrested today.
Yeah, there's no happy holidays on this end. It's Merry Christmas and happy holidays too. That's fine if it floats your boat. But what a great day to celebrate. We get to be with friends and family, and it's great to reconnect with you. I want to talk about all things economy. And of course, you emailed me that today our discussion should be all about the Fed. Gold, silver, and platinum are rocking. And then you sent me a link to this, and I have to tell you, Bob, I thought this was pretty amusing. Let me do a screen share here so folks can see this. All right. Fed analysis warns of economic ruin when governments print money to pay off debt. Now, that is really quite humorous, Bob, because the way I see it at this point, this nation is being run like a credit card hoarder and an overspender, and now they're using the money they print not to pay off debt, but just to keep the boat afloat. It's just out of control. You want to talk about economic ruin, Bob? Let's see where things are 10 years from now if they keep going this way.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you'd get a kick out of it. Look, the plan is, in case people haven't already figured it out, is that they use debt to be able to, that they conjure out of thin air to be able to steal real assets. You know, between the government and the private banks, they have a claim on nearly all the assets in the United States and probably, in fact, the whole world. So, people always ask me, well, who owns the Fed? I'm like, well, they're the preferred shareholders of the banks. So once you know who those people are, those are the people who own the world. They own the politicians and everything else. And, that note came out because the central banks they're looking to figure out who they're going to blame when this whole thing blows up. But, the good news for us is that there's always a bull market somewhere to be able to take advantage of these kind of calamities. And that's why I thought you would appreciate it, knowing, this week, gold, silver, platinum, just right out of the chute started to push up higher again, is because people now are realizing that they're going to have something that has collateral that has no claim on it when this whole thing does blow up, because the Fed's not going to stop. They're printing $500 billion just in these last 2 weeks, Sean, to get the banks through the end of the year. And it's not going to stop. As long as the government keeps spending, the Fed's going to have to keep printing. And it goes into this not QE to, as you put a question to me, Bob, we're going to do QE4. Well, gold and silver will tell you when they caught up and they start going into QE4. And I think we're seeing that right now. The banks around the world are hoarding right now. $1.5 trillion in US dollars are sitting offshore in foreign banks because they're scared to death about the deposit runs that they're starting to experience in Hong Kong and in Germany, for example.
Well, maybe we should talk a little bit about that. We could talk a little bit about repo if you'd like. I talked to Mike Krieger from Liberty Blitzkrieg most recently prior to this interview, and Mike said that the looting that we saw in 2008 is continuing with what this repo stuff is. It's just another bailout for the wealthiest of the wealthy. And Mike told me during that interview that any of the inflation that we'd otherwise be seeing in the economy is instead being shown only in the stuff that the rich people buy, the super uber wealthy, right? So high-priced New York real estate, high-priced valuable art, high-priced collectible cars, high-priced collectible watches. And that's why we're not seeing it in the general economy. And it just begs the question, at what point do we see it in the general economy? At what point do they destroy the dollar to the point where none of us are able to buy the things we need on a day-to-day basis to survive?
Yeah, look, there's two kinds of depressions, Sean. There is the debt deflation, liquidation that we saw in the 30s. And then there's what I call inflationary depression. And the Fed, they figured out they can't do a debt liquidation depression because it's too obvious that their fingerprints are on it and people see it. So they're doing what's called an inflationary depression approach. Whereas things like the stock market and homes and automobiles and credit card rates all get to a point where they're unaffordable, but it's a boiled frog approach where they could just say, hey, look, the economy's growing. I don't know why you're putting the blame on us, but the effect's the same, is your ability to have a standard of living decreases over time. So that's their plan. At some point, that runs out of runway too, and then we end up with the liquidation anyway. It's going to be a double whammy this time, because we're really at the end game right now, Sean. We're going to push through. Probably they'll keep the economy kicking along here, get Trump reelected, and then 2021, 2022 area, I think things are going to get really nasty. That doesn't mean the stock market doesn't get bumpy beforehand, but I think they can, with so much money sloshing around, they probably can keep the plates in the air for another year.
Peter Schiff has been sounding the alarm on a lot of this stuff forever, and yet the stock market keeps going up. We're at what? 28,550 on the Dow. Meanwhile, the S&P, according to Zero Hedge, is looking a little bit like a bubble. The Fed is inflating a bubble, they say. Valuation on the S&P is approaching 19 times earnings, which is up from 14 to 15 times just 1 year ago. And the S&P has scored its longest streak of record highs since 1998. They're going to keep inflating the bubble until eventually the bubble pops. But I mean, nobody knows when that is. Is it Dow 50,000? Is it Dow 100,000? I mean, again, that's where all the inflation is. People say there's no inflation. Look at the Dow and the S&P, and it's now a rich man's market. It really is. It's become a plaything for the elite.
Yeah, and see, that's why I don't worry about when the stock market per se is going to crash. I'm interested in things that I think are still going to go much, much higher. And we've been having just a very good year, just trading in and out of the gold and silver miners, and then there's a few platinum plays that we're in and out of as well. And so I let that parlor game go to people that can afford to play that, and we're just micro, trading in and out. And but what happened though this week though, which is really interesting, reason why I shot you those notes, is that a couple of silver miners actually broke out in the clear air. That means they broke above the highs they hit in 2016. And now we have to start looking at the highs of 2011, which was a pretty nice move for silver miners in, coming out of the great financial crisis. So, when you and I talk, and we've been talking about this all year, we've gone from the first inning, now we're probably in the third inning. And I think the next move's happening between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day is when silver and gold make their biggest moves for the year, and you can leverage that with trading the miners, and that's what we've been doing. And today I just shot you notes from the moment we entered the trades until I shot you over a couple charts. That's the kind of money we made today on normal type of silver miners. Platinum miner went up 6%, silver miners were up 3%. Some of them, like First Majestic, were up nearly 10% today. And those are big moves. And that means people are taking advantage of the holiday time period to enter into positions here before other people get back, in January. So that's where the money's going to leak, Sean, and that's where we're going to trade it.
Yeah, well, why don't you give people a pitch here? And guys, this part of the interview is brought to you by Bob Kudla and Trade Genius, who's been nice enough to step up and help support SGT Report. So I know you guys are offering some specials through December 28th, and you sent me that chart for CDE, the mining company that made a nice move on Monday. And I guess that's the type of stuff you bring to the table for people to chew on and potentially make money regardless of what the markets are doing. So why don't you just briefly tell people about Trade Genius and the specials running through December 28th?
Yeah, so what we do at Trade Genius, we educate and we inform people on how to trade the stock market and also the cryptocurrency markets as well. And then we have two types of algorithms, one that looks at momentum, another one looks at price levels. And we take advantage of those because they see, when the buying momentum's coming in, and they tell us where the best price to enter. And that's what we share with our subscribers. So they could be in the trading rooms and we could share information there. We also text message out trade signals. And then we also have these algorithms that are available for them to use on their own PC using a software package called TradingView, which is a big charting program out there that we connected with to be able to put our algorithms out there so people actually literally see buy and sell, Sean. And then we have training, we have personal coaching. And then we have some specialized rooms where people that are really active traders can pay a little bit more money and trade some things that we don't normally share in the trading rooms, because people have different levels of experience. But we've done very, very well. I shot you over our track record like I do every month, and we're just consistently performing at that high level. And there's just tremendous amount of opportunities out there. And like I said earlier, is that there's always a bull market somewhere. No matter what the stock market does, money's moving from something to something. We identify that. Our algorithm gives us insight as to when to enter, and then we share that with our students and our subscribers. So I encourage you to check us out. We have a lot of different bundles. If you're experienced or if you're a beginner, if you like to trade cryptos, you like to trade the stock market, we even trade Forex, and we're even showing people how to trade the futures market. So it's a really, really good program. We're very active in the rooms. I'm in there every single day. My partner, Phil, on the crypto side and on the future side is in there every single day. So you have real traders helping you trade. It's not just, shooting information your way.
All right, very good. I'll leave the link below this interview for you guys if you want to check that out with Trade Genius. All right, Bob, let's turn our attention to impeachment, Russiagate, all things deep state. Italian prosecutors believe Joseph Misfud, the man who started Russiagate, may be dead. Now, I wanted to share this with folks in a micro documentary, but given the holidays here and family stuff, I don't know if I'll have the chance to do that. So let me go to a screen share and just share this article. Can you see that, Bob? This is
I do.
Daily Mail. Boy, their ads get in the way. It's almost an unusable site. MI5 informants do have a license to kill. Policy allowing moles to murder, kidnap, and torture to maintain cover is legal. Tribunal rules. When we hear things like Misfud might be dead and so many other mysterious deaths, look at the Clinton body count, for instance. Would it surprise you for a minute to learn that the MI5, just like James Bond, a license to kill, policy allowing moles to murder is A-OK with the MI5? I have a sneaking suspicion it's okay with the CIA too, Bob. And guess what? Nobody knows exactly who Misfud was working for, but he was definitely a spook.
Yeah, I think Barr and the other gentleman, I always forget his name, the guy that's doing the prosecuting is they've already interviewed him, and so, but it's part of the Clinton death count, and I think the heat's being turned up. Look, I told people from the very beginning this impeachment thing's a non-issue. Trump won impeachment. I think people now are looking at the Democrats and like this is a clown show, and now Trump's just going to keep asking for the Senate trial, because then they've now acquired enough information to indict people. Trump also won the trade war, if we're going to slip in that direction too. The Chinese now are bending all over backwards to try to get this tier 1 deal signed, because their economy's tanking and they can't grow enough food for their people. And so that's why I said to you, it's all about the Fed now. It's the only game in town right now. Trump's on he's on fire. He has the Democrats in disarray. Whoever's competing against him for the presidency are either inept or corrupt, and the Chinese now are at a competitive disadvantage, which we always knew. It's just that the mainstream media just keeps trying to pound, anything Trump does, into submission. But now it's really just about the Fed. So this impeachment thing, I love for it to go forward. But I think what's going to happen now is I think we're going to start seeing these indictments start to roll through. I know you noticed last week a bunch of resignations in the Pentagon. And so they're starting to cruise through now and start to take names and start bouncing people out. And I wouldn't be surprised in the next 60 days, you're going to see that into the FBI. And then I think you'll see going right into the time when the Democrats are going to have their convention. I think you're going to see, perp row going, and then Trump just dominating that news cycle.
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think that John Durham is the real deal. That's the investigation that's still going on. And of course, the Horowitz report cleared nobody. Okay. Doesn't matter how Comey wants to try to spin it publicly for his own benefit. The IG, in Horowitz's own words, cleared no one. Okay. And meanwhile, you have AG Barr talking very matter of factly about what he believes to have been spying that did occur and wanting to vet all of that out. And he's giving Durham all the time Durham needs to dot I's and cross T's. And you're right, there is an investigation going on that's not just domestic, it's international in scope. I mean, have you been following what Rudy Giuliani has been saying? What he's uncovered in Ukraine makes what we already know about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden look like child's play. The Ukrainians were involved in election meddling, not the Russians, Bob.
Yeah, and it's so funny when people underestimate Rudy Giuliani. All these millennials have no clue who this dude is, and he took down the five families in New York, so he knows how to hunt for information and how to build a criminal complaint, and he's ferreting out all this information for Durham to be able to sweep up and to make a case. Look, it's not just Hunter Biden that's dirty here. It's John Kerry's kid, it's Pelosi's kid, it's Romney's kid. All these people were going to make money in Ukraine by pivoting on their family's connections, and this was the big slush fund that they thought they're going to be tapping into. I don't think anybody in their wildest dreams thought on that side that Trump was going to win and end this thing. And now they're all scrambling. I mean, even Schiff, he has connections into some of these companies too. So that's why they push so hard to obfuscate and try to put this back on Trump, because they know when the light starts shining on what they did, it's going to be pretty incredible.
Yeah, to say the least. Well, let me do another screen share. And since we discussed Giuliani briefly, let me play a clip from a real news network that's doing incredible work, OWN, One American News. And I think you'll very much appreciate this clip if you haven't already seen it, Bob. So let me play this for folks.
First phone call from the Vice President Poroshenko showing up in Shokin's office and saying, Biden's putting pressure on me. Poroshenko forward with Burisma, and slow it down. And all of a sudden, Shokin gets this communique from Latvia that shows a $15 million laundering transaction, classic laundering transaction. It goes from Ukraine to Latvia, disguised as a loan to another company, Wire Logic, I believe. It then goes to Cyprus, gets disguised as another loan, then it's dispersed as payment of board fees. Now, you don't make two loans to pay board fees unless you're laundering the money. $3 million gets to Hunter Biden that way. That is a straight-out violation of a money laundering statute.
Now, it's amusing to watch Joe Biden back on his heels when people are starting to wake up and go to his rallies and confront him about his criminality in the Ukraine. And he gets so defensive and he gets angry and he points at people and calls them Bub and Jack and says, there's no evidence. All we have is evidence. The evidence is spilling out and people can see it. Anybody with two eyes to see and two ears to hear knows that Joe Biden is a mafioso, just like Hillary Clinton.
And look, the Democrats are going to experience a Boris Johnson moment in November. They take the left takes people as fools, and they figure they can just spoon feed them what they want them to know, and they're going to act accordingly. And that's what in Britain, they said, hey, the election was too close to call, and it was one of the largest landslide defeats for the left since the 30s. And so I think we're seeing the same thing here. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they just said, look, I don't share with people my political affiliation. In fact, I don't even mark down what I am, for voting, because, I don't want somebody to see my name and see a R next to it, and then next thing you know, my car's getting bashed in, or they're egging my house, or cause issues for my kids. And I think what happens is people now just are quiet, and they're just going to vote it out. And I think that's what we're going to see in November. You notice the polls went totally against the Democrats as they unfolded impeachment, because there was no there.
Yeah.
When this stuff starts coming out, Sean, and there is a there, then people are going to connect the dots and say, oh my gosh, we're ready to condemn an innocent man here. and then that usually gets a little bit of a good guy effect.
Yeah. You know, I saw a piece the other day that said Obama is quietly whispering to top supporters and donators, backers, to get behind Elizabeth Warren, not Joe Biden. Joe Biden is so dead in the water. I mean, he's a liability, just like Hillary Clinton's a liability. And if the best they have is Elizabeth Warren, my God, you want to talk about a bankrupt, an intellectually bankrupt and financially bankrupt party. The Democrats are quite literally bankrupt across the board. The best they have is Elizabeth Warren. It's just insanity. I'm not even sure how the Democrat Party is this far gone. The Democrat Party, the party of John F. Kennedy, is now this. It's just pathetic.
Well, she can't tell the truth. I mean, on the little things, it's one thing you say, hey, you can keep your plan, and in a political context. I mean, she can't even tell us what her race is. She can't tell us how her kids went to school. She can't tell us that whether she got fired or not because she was pregnant. I mean, these things are, she created a narrative about herself that's patently false. And now these lies are coming up against them. It's as though they don't know that social media has an archive.
Yeah, exactly. It's as though they think people are actually stupid and that their propaganda will work like it's worked for the past several decades. It doesn't work anymore. People are waking up, and this impeachment hoax is just more evidence of that. People are waking up in droves. And you're right, the polls have now turned against the Democrats. Even the dishonest polls, the polls they rig, show that President Trump can beat any of the current Democratic candidates. If they actually had a trial in the Senate where evidence could be shown and witnesses could be called, and I know they don't want that, right? I think Graham just wants to fast track this thing and not call witnesses and just get the whole thing over with. I think they should take another tact if they can get it going in the Senate, because the Democrats are holding up impeachment because they know it's a dead cat. But if there was actually a trial in the Senate, wouldn't you love to see witnesses called? I would love to see Joe Biden and Hunter Biden called to the stand.
Yeah, look, and Trump is allowed to defend himself. So, this whole notion of that Pelosi talking about a fair trial, she wants a fair trial for her, not for the defendant. It tells you volumes of how the Democrats view being in charge means. They're probably jealous of the communist Chinese in which way they do business. And I just laughed. Yeah, so it'll all come out. And but I think what they're going to do now, they're going to start pressuring the Democrats anyway. I think Graham is going to just start having hearings on stuff. And then he's going to, when Giuliani has his act together, he's going to compel him to testify, quote unquote, unwillingly, but willingly. And all that stuff's going to come out. And then in the meantime, you're going to have Durham and Barr just lining up indictments. I think it's truly going to happen. And now that we know this impeachment thing was just a total joke, probably Trump's the cleanest politician we've had in the last 200 years. They had to get a whistleblower who's not a whistleblower. I'd like to get that guy on the stand. Wouldn't you, Sean?
Oh, yeah, the whistleblower that shall not be named, and now the mainstream media is being forced to name him. It's all been a ruse from the beginning. And here we sit just a year before the next election, and I think that the greatest hope we have is that the Durham report comes out as soon as possible. I'm hearing spring or summer. And then real indictments of real criminals needs to happen. And then and only then will the tide turn back towards we the people, Bob.
Yeah, look, I think a lot of people that are very, very wealthy in this country, are probably scared with and I think you're going to see a lot of people just throwing themselves over to Trump, and the bureaucracies that they control are going to probably do everything they can to stymie what the Democrats are trying to do. You're starting to see it already. He won the Fed over. The Chinese have realized he's probably going to be reelected. They rolled over. Impeachment's a joke. And I think Trump's going to have his way with the Democrats with any kind of economic plan going into the spring and summer that will goose economic growth, so they're not going to be obstructionists. He's going to get NAFTA, the new NAFTA approved, Sean. He's going to do a new trade deal with Britain. So there's a lot of things to be hopeful for, in terms of economic growth, or at least to stave off the the recessionary bears here for at least another 12 months, while we all continue to prepare, for the recession that's going to come. And when it comes, it's going to be a pretty wicked one. And I'm sure you and I will be talking about that in the coming year.
Well, we certainly will be. And I want to thank you for your time today. And I think a great way to end this conversation is to turn it back to President Trump, who again tweeted on Monday, "The Democrats and crooked Hillary paid for and provided a fake dossier with phony information gotten from foreign sources, pushed it to the corrupt media and dirty cops, and have now been caught." By the way, dirty cops refers specifically to Comey. He says, "They spied on my campaign, then tried to cover it up, just like Watergate, but bigger." And what I love about this president, say what you want about this president, folks. If you don't support him, if you're one of the Mark Marons of the world or one of the diehard liberals, what I love about this man is that he takes his case directly to the American people via Twitter. And he doesn't mince words, and he generally deals in facts. And everything in that tweet, "The Democrats and crooked Hillary paid for and provided the fake dossier," is hardcore truth. And there's no more covering it up. There's just no more covering it up. And that's the best possible news I can share, folks, is that the mainstream Mockingbird horror media has lost its grip on the narrative, the deep state narrative that they peddle. That stuff no longer works. CNN may wish it would work. And I've heard that they pay, get this, Bob, I heard CNN pays, I think it's 58 airports, something like that around the country, $100,000 per year each to air their crappy network in those terminals. That's how bankrupt this whole thing is. And the emperor has no clothes. People can see it. The emperor has no clothes. The Mockingbird mainstream media, the horror media, and their Democrat partners, the emperor has no clothes. And that's the best possible news. We can see these folks in the wide open now.
Oh, yeah, it is. And it's been obvious for you and I for a long, long time. And I think the rest of America now is paying attention.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Bob, thank you so much. I wish you a very Merry Christmas. And folks, Merry Christmas to you and your families as well. Thanks so much for listening. Bob, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.
And guys, for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, and stay tuned. So much more to come. It's a busy week this week and so much to talk about in 2020. You can visit us directly for real news every single day at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
Trump signaled a loss of narrative control and power. So that's what I think they're worried about. They're not so much worried about Trump, but they're worried about the precedent that Trump set.